Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thank you so much for joining in, everyone. Wow, we're just getting started, and there's already 8 of us here live. And to anyone who's watching this when it wasn't live, recording of a live broadcast. So, life is what can we say about life? It's glorious, it's painful, it's mysterious. Many people don't really even have a sense of who they are or why they're here or what they're doing. And I used to be one of them. I had a sense of what I was doing. I was doing different activities, and I could have told you all about me. Like, I'm this kind of person, and I like this, and I don't like that. But on a much deeper level, I couldn't really answer the question, what am I? Like, what is it? What is a human being? What am I doing here on this planet? What's all of this all about? I didn't have clear answers to those questions. And thanks to the teachings of Bruno Groening, I do now. That's not to say I have it all figured out by any means, but what it means is I have a very clear compass for how to navigate life. And sometimes applying that compass, and by compass, I mean specifically what Bruno Groening taught. And sometimes to apply that compass, it takes a little time. Sometimes it's challenging, sometimes it's painful, oftentimes it's rewarding. For example, Bruno Groening said to follow God. Well, that's easy to grasp intellectually, like, okay, there's a supreme reality being, and I'm just going to take guidance and directions from it. But how to do that? That's where, as we say here in America, maybe you say it elsewhere, the rubber meets the road. But what I can say is while I sometimes struggle to apply these teachings, I have a very clear sense of what I am, of what a human being is. I have a very clear sense of what life is about. And I have a very clear set of principles for how to live life. Now, again, the applying of those principles, that's sometimes troubling and challenging, and I fall short often. But I have a sense that I know. And today I'm going to share with you my understanding of the very simple, straightforward answers to these questions. And maybe the most important question is how to do life. Like, how do I do this thing? And today I'm going to share some what I consider very simple instructions for how to live life. So, for anyone who's new, very warm welcome, and thank you so much for joining in. And welcome, Claudia, and welcome Forever Loving Everything, and warm welcome to everyone else, and welcome to Princess Kitty Cat, who's 2 feet away from my computer, doing her own form of tuning in, which is what we're about to do. So one of the fundamental principles of life that I learned from Bruno Groening was this idea that human beings need energy. We need to be full of vitality and life energy in order to live life. He called this in German Einstellung, which has many translations. Tuning in is maybe the simplest one. To tune into this energy and take it in. So it's very simple to do. Please sit with your legs uncrossed, feet flat on the floor, hands on your legs, palms facing upwards, back not slouched over, but not stiff, but just in a relaxed upright position. And then please close your eyes. And now hand over all burdens and worries to a higher power, a higher principle, a spiritual helper that you trust. Bruno Groening said that he was one such helper, that he could take on people's burdens. And I'll share a little bit more about that soon. But just letting go of fear and worry and problems, all our problems, handing them over to life. If you believe in have a particular belief in God, handing them over to God. And then think of something that makes you smile, something that makes your heart smile. And then begin to observe your body, having the will, the intention to take in good energy. That's the technique. Observing the body, taking in healing life energy. Noticing what you feel. Taking in the good. Just keep coming back to observing the body. I'm feeling delight because a friend of mine has dropped by. Noticing what you feel. Letting in this good energy. Filling yourself up with life. So thank you everyone for joining in, and a very warm welcome to David Starr, who is a very dear God brother of mine, and he's come to a couple in-person events I led, and this is the first time I believe he's hopped on a live broadcast. So thank you, friend. So the thing is, on the spiritual path or the religious path or just any kind of metaphysical path, is most of us have been taught wrongly about what God is, what life is. And so part of this journey is unlearning. Um, I was taught that to follow God or to be religious or be spiritual meant going to church on Sundays and having a certain belief system. And that's it. Like it was like this formula. You believe certain thoughts, you go to church on Sunday, and you're good. Like that's what I was taught that God wanted from me, and um, that was the way to have a spiritual life. I've come to believe that's only a very small part of it. So part of this, and on top of that, I was taught the most horrific things about God. That God was vengeful, that God punishes people, that God tortures people for eternity. And so as I let go of the religious path and tried to have a more, or let go of what I was brought up with and tried to, what is life about? What is God? What am I doing here? What's the meaning of life? How do I live? One of the first things I had to do was contend with this inaccurate information that I had taken in about God. And so it took me mm, almost 30 some years to even believe in God because I had just been taught the most painful things about. And so the first piece is let's just give up. I don't know if give up is the word. Let's release everything we've been taught about God and just ask to be shown. Let's form a direct connection to God and ask the divine to reveal itself to us. Bruno Groening used very simple words to describe God. He said, God is love, God is goodness, God is Ordnung, a German word which means harmony, order, balance. And he also said, God is Leben, another German word which means life, existence, the animating force of life. And that's a God I can believe in. And that's a God that I would want to draw closer to and want to follow. And Bruno said, God is everywhere and in everything. And so, as I said, many people have been taught so wrongly about God. And so, part of the journey is releasing those ideas. But let's see if we can get on board with this idea that God is love, that God is all around us, that God is life and aliveness itself. Now, when I talk like that, then I start to feel excited of like, wow, I want to draw closer to that. I want to be closer to love and life. I want to be in alignment with that. I want to be in harmony with life and love and goodness. Like that's exciting. That's where the spiritual or religious path gets exciting, where there's actually this desire to be closer and closer to God. But to do that, first we have to put aside just, there's no other way to say it, the junk that we were taught and be open to a new idea. I didn't want to draw closer to a God that would torture people forever. I was scared of that idea, but I believed it at the time. I was scared of God until I released that idea. So continue to observe our body, asking to take in this divine energy and asking the divine, please reveal yourself to me. I want to know the truth about you. I want to be closer to you. But before we say I want to be closer, we might need to say I want to understand you. We've been taught to learn about God through books, but Bruno Groening very simply said to be connected to God. That is everything. So let's observe our bodies right now and begin to have a direct experience of the divine. Noticing what you feel, having the intention, the will to take in this good energy and be freed from everything not good. Noticing what you feel, taking in the good, noticing what you feel, taking in the good. Just keep coming back to observing the body. So, Bruno Groening said, trust in the good, which is one way that he used to explain God, the good. Trust in the good is the foundation of divine order. If we don't believe that life is fundamentally good, that the fundamental principle that gave birth to life, the universe, to us is good, then we live in a pretty scary place, right? If if I live in a house that's built on a shaky foundation, then every time the wind blows, the house is gonna go like this, and I'm gonna not feel very secure or safe in that house. Well, in the same way, if we don't believe that life is fundamentally fair and trustworthy and good, then we're gonna go through life scared. And it's almost logical. Like if life isn't trustworthy or safe, then fear makes sense. And yet the teachings across the ages of great mystics is that life is good and trustworthy. So once we come up with a sense of, and at first it might just be an idea, it might be a slight feeling, it might be a little bit of trust, a little bit of faith, and that's all that's needed is some openness. And from there, beautiful, beautiful tree of faith can spring from that tiny seed of openness. So we're going to, so if we have just a little ounce of openness that there's a fundamental goodness, a a fundamental reality we can trust in, that God, our Maker, is reliable and is only good, then the next step makes sense of seeking to align ourselves with that, to be in different ways to say it, to be connected, to be in relation to follow. So first we make a decision to believe that God is our life or is trustworthy, and then we begin to seek to align ourselves with it, with with the supreme. Because Bruno Groening pointed out that human beings have this idea that we don't need God. We can just do our own thing. And that hasn't worked out so well. Because according to Bruno Groening, we are children of God, utterly dependent on God, just in the same way that a newborn child or a small child is dependent on its parents. So, first, we have to realize that our maker, our parent, is reliable. And then we need to begin to seek it. We can't really seek it until we trust it. We don't have to fully trust it to seek it, but there just has to be an ounce of I'm willing to believe that God is reliable and trustworthy. Hmm. So how to seek this reality? Well, part of it is Bruno Groening taught us this very simple technique of observing the body, to take in this divine energy, to be connected to this reality. And we start by practicing by just doing it on our own or doing it during a gathering like this. But then ultimately, the goal is to go do it throughout life. Well, what good, you might ask, is it to be connected to God? Well, that's a really good question. First of all, it feels really good, if nothing else. But let's back up a moment. What if we're designed to be connected to God? Fish are designed to be in water. What if, and when they're out of water, they don't do so well. What if a human being is designed to be connected to God? And without that connection, we don't do so well. We don't do well without air. Obviously, a person can go their whole life without feeling connected to God. But according to Bruno Groening, they're not actually living. And that's a very strong statement, and each person needs to reflect on it for themselves. I've come to the conviction that when I'm not, um, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so let me back up a moment. So let's reflect on our smallness and the vastness of creation, and then the unfathomable vastness of that which gave birth to creation. And when we look at it that way, we can begin to see um, how small we are and how vulnerable we are. And it can feel scary. These bodies are vulnerable to all sorts of harm. Yet Bruno Groening said, we're not bodies, we're a soul. We've been given a body to have this experience. And as a soul in a body, that it's natural to be taking this energy in and being continually connected to God. So let's take a little time and reflect on that, noticing what we feel, noticing if it resonates. Oh, I'm not a body, I have a body. I don't have a soul, I am a soul. While this body is grown up, what if I'm me, a soul, is and remains a child of God that needs to be in communion, in connection with that which made me. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Bruno Groening's word for it. Reflect on it yourself and draw your own conclusion. Observing the body, noticing what you feel. Handing over any negative thoughts. They don't serve us. Observing the body, noticing what you feel. So, we've looked at the idea that there's a fundamental reality that's trustworthy. And we've looked at the idea that we are a creation of that, and that what we are is a soul in this body. And then we've looked at the relationship between the soul and its maker, between life, God, goodness, and us, and that we're actually it's 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 like a child to a parent, that we're utterly dependent on that, and that there's this energy that we need for our wellness, and that we can take this energy in. And Bruno Groening pointed out that while there is a fundamental good reality, there is another force that he said we need to be connected to that good reality. There is another force, he said, we need to be mindful of. He called it Bosse in German, which means nastiness, viciousness, evil. This force or energy which is harmful, which is destructive. And that's through our connecting to this negative force, energy, consciousness that's the cause of all of our problems, and that it's connecting to the divine that's the solution to all of our problems. Now, the main way that bosse, evil, nastiness, shows up is it gives us untrue thoughts. Bruno likened us to a radio antenna that can receive energy, but can also receive thoughts. He said we need to be very mindful whether a thought is good or not good, true or false, evil or good. Why is it so important? Well, all you need to do is observe yourself a little bit, and you'll see that negative thoughts don't feel good. They're actually very stressful, and they lead us to do stressful things. In fact, a lie detector test works by measuring stress levels. When a person speaks a lie, it's stressful. It's, I think the lie detector test is called a galvanic skin response. And what it measures is tension. When we speak a lie, our body tenses up. When we have a negative thought and we believe it, it's actually a stressful event. Don't take my word for it, just watch. If you're anything like me, you'll be walking down the street having a great day, and then a negative thought comes in and you don't catch it, and you kind of say yes to it, and next thing you know, you feel a little funky. Then another negative thought comes in, and then they start piling in. Now, once we take in this negativity, Bruno Groening said, as the thought, so the deed, that then we'll behave negatively. That thought actually drives, in some ways, almost forces us to to behave certain ways. Because if we believe something to be true, we're going to act on it. You know, if I believe some person is an evil person and they need to be punished, if I really say yes to that thought, then some way, somehow, I'm going to try and punish them, whether it's through being mean, or whether it's through seeking revenge, or whether it's through doing something more graphic or violent. Our thoughts, if we take a thought as true, we're going to act on it. And so to become mindful of our thoughts is an essential aspect of life. And to learn to recognize which ones are true and not true, which ones are good and not good. So let's reflect on all this, the idea of being like a receiver. And that we don't just receive energy, we receive thoughts. Observing the body, taking in what's good, having the intention. Watching the thoughts come, and then reflecting, is this a good thought? Is this a true thought? So we looked at the idea of having a fundamental trust in the primordial, in the fabric of existence, the primordial reality, and that we can take in energy from that goodness and our relationship to it. And not only do we take in energy, but we take in thoughts, and that we need to decide which thoughts we say yes to. So, everything I've talked about today is just the nuts and bolts of being in alignment with that with God, with that fundamental reality, aligning ourselves through taking in this energy, aligning ourselves through having faith and trust in it, aligning ourselves by discerning which thoughts are true and which thoughts are not true, because nothing will disconnect us from God more quickly than an untrue thought. That's their job. That's evil's job, to disconnect us from God. And so from there, then our task is to go out and do good, guided by this energy, guided by good thoughts, guided by faith and trust. That's going to look a little different for each one of us. Doing good may be as simple as just being kind to the next person you see. Doing good may be going and apologizing to someone. It's a moment by moment daily practice of seeking to be aligned with God and then acting on that. And these are the ways to get aligned and stay aligned. Observing your body, taking in this energy, having faith and trust in God, being mindful of thoughts, the recognition of our need for God. If we don't think we need God, then we're not going to seek it. So everything I've just shared is from the teachings of a man named Bruno Groening. That's his picture behind me, the bigger picture. And he was the most Christ-like being I've ever heard of. When I say Christ-like, what I mean is he would tell paralyzed people to stand up and they would stand up. Terminal cases of PTSD would just vanish. Terminal cases of cancer in his presence. And everything I've taught is my understanding of what he taught. What he called the rules of the game of life. He said life is a game. And to know how to play well, we need to know how things operate. And what I've just offered today are some of the fundamentals. One of the things he also pointed out is that at a certain point, people need, he never came up with an exact term, but in essence, a spiritual helper. They need someone to help them overcome all the negativity and all the evil that people have taken in so much negative energy and taken in so many negative thoughts that what they need is a helper. And he said that he himself was one such person who could help people. He never said he was the only one. He spoke very highly of Jesus Christ, and he expressed deep respect for the yogis and masters from the East. He wasn't particular to any religion and didn't encourage people to join a particular religion. He encouraged people to practice whatever religion they were a part of, to do the actual spiritual work of connecting to God, of seeking to being guided, of having faith, of observing our thoughts and only taking in good thoughts, and then doing good deeds. And here's what he said about the need for a spiritual helper. It depends on the person himself how he takes care of himself, of his body. If he takes the divine power into himself, if he stays within divine guidance, then he will have protection. But if he leaves the guidance, he won't have it. He'll be without any guidance. If man does not stay where he can be guided, where he gets power, he will be powerless. He will slide into the depths, and he will have to be led back to the connection where he can absorb the energies within himself again. So this idea of being connected to God is a fundamental just fact of life for Bruno Groening. And when we step away from that, then we start taking in evil, because Bruno Groening said every moment the human being is guided. The question is, are they guided by what's good or what's not good? If we're guided by what's not good, evil, long enough, it starts to pile up. And we get to the place where we can't even reestablish the connection to good on our own. At that point, as he said here, we need to be led out of the darkness by a spiritual helper. This is a very unpopular idea in today's modern spiritual world. The idea of, well, God lives within me, so I don't need a teacher, or, um, you know, I um, I don't want to look outside of me. Now, Bruno Groening actually agreed with that, and he said, in essence, that you need a helper until you don't. If you're able to experience the divine connection on your own, and here, even more importantly, if you're able to heal yourself of illness. Because according to Bruno Groening, illness comes from disconnection from the good, from evil just piling on. If you're able to free yourself from evil, which includes illness and negative thinking, then you don't need a helper. You already have a good, clear connection with the good. However, if you cannot, Bruno Groening, and he's not alone in this. It's a fundamental fact. I've studied other religions. For example, in Buddhism, the need for a teacher is paramount. Same thing in Hinduism. If you want to achieve enlightenment, it's just considered an absolute requirement. And Bruno Groening put it in essence like this, that if you have really lost the connection to the good and you've sunk to a certain point, you need a helper. I didn't know what to make of this when I heard it, but I knew that I was just desperate to get my health back. And so I was willing to try. So I asked this person, Bruno Groening, who's no longer in his body, for help. I asked, hey, please take these illnesses and give me health. And it happened. It happened for me, and it's happened for thousands, tens, probably at this point, at least 100,000 other people, if not more. That's probably a conservative effort. Bruno never claimed to be the only spiritual helper that could do these things. But first, let's sit. We'll speak a little bit more about healing in a moment, but let's sit with all this. The idea of a helper. The idea, is it possible that at a certain point the burdens are so heavy we can't unburden ourselves, that we need help? This is from a spiritual point of view. We all know from a human point of view that yes, burdens can get to a certain point where we need help from other people. Is this true on the spiritual plane as well? Let's find out. Let's really reflect deeply. Let's ask ourselves as we observe our bodies taking in this good energy. Noticing what you feel. Taking in the good. Don't take my word for it. ask this simple, humble man, Bruno Groening, or ask a spiritual helper that you trust, is this true? Or show me if this is true. Or say, I want to believe, but I need to know if this is true or not. That's what was suggested to me, and I tried it out, and I found that it was very true. So, healing. Bruno Groening is known as a healer, and yet he said physical healing was only 10% of what he did. I started this talk by mentioning that in his presence, illness just vanished. How? Well, the principles there's two ways that he taught that healing can happen. One is that that certain spiritual beings, and he spoke of himself as one such being, he spoke of Christ as another, have the ability to just take on the illnesses of other people and to literally burn them up. The other way is that he taught people exactly what I've taught right here, right now, spiritual life principles for how to become your own healer, which was his ultimate goal. He said, after I am gone, the time will be right for everyone to become their own doctor, their own healer. Everyone will experience help and healing inside themselves. So he just considered himself a helper. He said, I'm just a signpost pointing people in the right direction. In this video, you'll see on the picture of it, there's a picture of Bruno Groening where this energy was actually caught on film. This energy that he was very adept at taking in and passing along and taught people how to take in for their own healing. I've experienced many healings on this path. I know many people who have. I used to have chronic sore throats where I got a sore throat at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. And I'd have to do all these things to fight it off. And if I didn't fight it off, I would get sick and be sick for quite some time. Within about 4 months of really practicing this, what we're doing, tuning in, taking in this energy, I got a sore throat and I got sick. And what I did was I just laid in bed and tuned in, received this energy. And I put a book that had a picture of Bruno Groening on it because pictures seem to carry this healing energy. Not seem to, they do. And first of all, the illness, I got sick and that was healed. I was done with it in 5.5 days, which was amazing. Back then, I would get sick for 7 to 9 days minimum, oftentimes longer. And the sore throats were gone. I just laid there with this book on my throat, tuning in. And so again, the illness healed more quickly than usual, and the sore throats vanished. Now I get a sore throat once a year. I used to get 50 to 75 sore throats a year, and I got sick 5 to 6 times a year. Now I get sick once every 15 months, once a year to once every once and a half a year. And this was just compared to some of the other healings I've experienced, quite minor. So I'd like to let's see, there's a quote I would like to leave us with. There we go. Bruno Groening said, a human being needs to be connected to God. God wanted no more. This is the true divine teaching. So I've done a lot of talking today. And all of this talking is dedicated to, hopefully, I mean, I wander, I wander off topic every now and then. But all of this, everything Bruno Groening taught and did, had one purpose: to help people realign themselves to the divine and to live from that place. Again, Bruno Groening said, man needs, or humans need to be connected to God. God wanted no more. This is the true divine teaching. Bruno Groening didn't come to give us another belief system. He didn't come to start a religion. He gave a practical way of life for us to go out and practice. And through doing it, my life was saved because the sore throats were just one of about 6 very serious illnesses. My body was literally on a downward slide. And it's through these teachings, and I believe the spiritual help of Bruno Groening, who said he is still available to help, he's just not in a body anymore, that literally saved my life. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining in. And today's a very special day. Today is the 61st anniversary of Bruno Groening leaving his body. So I'm very grateful to everyone who joined in live on this very special day. And actually, let's just take a few minutes of silence, and then I'll have a little bit more to say about Bruno Groening, given that this is a very special day. Taking in this good energy, seeking, and by connection, the German word was Verbindung, which means connection, link, union, communion, in like an intimate interface. That we're designed to be in communion with God. That's what's natural. And that, according to Bruno Groening, is all the beginning. It's what the whole purpose of spiritual teaching is, to lead to that. Observing the body, taking in the good, noticing. So please, if you take nothing else away from today, then please take in the idea that to find out for yourself if what I'm saying is true or not. You can ask God, you can ask Bruno Groening, you can almost demand, like, hey, I want to know the truth. Please, I want to know what's true. Is this stuff that this random guy on YouTube is saying is true? Is this stuff that this German guy back in the 1950s is saying is true? I want to know. You can maybe use a more polite voice, but you can be firm. It's to want what you're, if you say, I want to know the truth, you're, in another sense, you're saying, I want to know what's good. I want to know what's right. I want to live in alignment with what's right. If this information is new to you, some of it was very shocking to me, didn't make any sense. It wasn't until I experienced my first healing that I said, oh my gosh, this is real and true. So Bruno Groening is one of the most amazing souls I've ever heard of. And I have a bachelor's degree in religion, so I've studied world religions. I by no means know it all by any means. I've been very passionate on the spiritual path now for, oh my gosh, almost 29 years, almost 30 years. And he's one of the purest souls I've ever encountered. He taught in a language so simple a child could understand it, and so powerful and effective that healings happen when people were in his presence or just listen to his teachings. Healings are continuing to happen through people practicing what he taught. And everything I've told you, a 7-year-old could understand. Maybe 90% of what I've said, which, if I've done my job right, is just an accurate representation of what Bruno Groening taught. And most of it could be understood by a child. And having studied literally every major world religion and practiced almost all of them to different extents, what I can say is that what Bruno Groening taught is the absolute essence of every religion, of every spiritual path. Connection with this good reality and then living it. And he taught it in a simple, no-nonsense way that, again, is so simple that a child can understand it and practice it. While he was in his body, we have no idea how many people were healed. He went through every town in Germany, in post-World War II Germany, which was, of course, a wreck. For example, there was one account of he went to one meeting, and within an hour, there were something like 90 healings happened in 1 hour. And he did this for 10 years. So no one knows how many healings happened while he was in his body and how many healings continue. But who or whatever he was absolutely in alignment with this reality. And he was a true instrument of it and servant of it and conduit of this energy. People said the room would literally vibrate, that so much energy emanated from him. So if you'd like to know more about this topic, you can see my website, www.thehealingstream.org. And please do feel free to come back by this channel. I currently do live broadcasts often, at least at the time of the recording of this one. I do them often. Thank you so much, and hello to Claudia, and thank you, Anya. I had forgotten. I can't believe it, but I'd forgotten. Thank you for reminding me. And hello, PM. And thank you to everyone else who's joined in and everyone who's watched this video. So the final thing I'll close with is, the state of the world today it's quite disturbing to look at. Let's face it, there's a lot of evil and a lot of problems. And Bruno Groening adamantly said that the good will prevail, that all evil will leave this earth. And he used different words such as God's kingdom, and I don't know if he ever used that word. That's my word. But I believe he said paradise will be restored on this planet, and that we can be a part of it through wanting the good, through aligning with the good, and through doing the good. Thank you so much, and welcome to Gerald. I think this is your first time. Welcome. All right, friends, let's have a day and a life of aligning ourselves with what's good, freeing and hence being freed of everything not good, and then going out and shining this light and sharing this goodness. Thank you so much for joining in. Take care. Much love.